Hello, and welcome to I Am Dad Podcast with your fatherhood authority, Kenneth Braswell. 30 minutes of wisdom, information, resources, and nugget on your fatherhood journey. Or maybe you're just curious and want to hear some real talk about fatherhood, family, and the minds of men. Well, guess what? We got you too. Sit back, grab your pad and pen, and maybe even bring a little something to sip on. Enjoy 30 straight minutes of fatherhood, family, and fun with the Fatherhood Authority, Kenneth Braswell.
There we go. What's up, y'all, to another episode of I Am Dad Podcast, where we delve into the diverse and inspiring world of fatherhood. I'm your host, Kenneth Braswell, and today I am honored to be joined by the remarkable individual whose tireless dedication to family, community, and the advancement of responsible fatherhood has left an indelible mark on countless lives. Our guest today, Avis Denise Files, is more than just a program director, facilitator, and entrepreneur. She is a beacon of hope, a catalyst for positive change, and a shining example of what it means to be led with compassion and determination. With a Bachelor of Arts in Human Services from the University of Toledo, Avis has dedicated her career to serving those in need, working tirelessly in areas such as domestic violence, homelessness, and drug addiction services. Her journey has taken her to diverse venues where she passionately speaks on critical subjects ranging from the vital role of fathers in combating domestic violence to the importance of data collection and shaping effective policies. But Avis's impact extends far beyond the podium. As the program coordinator and director of various OFA grant-funded initiatives, including the groundbreaking Brothers United Fatherhood program, she has spearheaded efforts to promote healthy marriages and responsible fatherhood, touching the lives of countless families along the way. A trailblazer in her field, Avis made history in 2017 as the first woman to receive the Vicky Tereski Women in Responsible Leadership Award, a testament to her unwavering commitment to advancing the cause of responsible fatherhood and family strengthening. Beyond her professional accolades, Avis is a devoted wife, mother, and grandmother, guided by the steadfast belief that change a father, change a family, create a future. Join me in welcoming Avis Denise Files to the I Am Dad podcast as we explore her journey, her wisdom, and her vision for a world where every father is empowered to build a better future for generations to come. Miss Files, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, sir.
Thank you for being here. I admire you. I do admire you. I admire your presence. I admire your dedication in a space where you see less and less of that. And it's always an issue to me only because I understand the gravity of the work that we do and what it means to people on the ground, right? The people that we try to serve, the people who you and I listen to each and every day, and we try to carry their stories and their lives with us so that we're always motivated by ensuring that all things are right and equal so that they can be provided the services and support that they deserve. The other thing I love about you is your energy and that energy that you bring into the room. And, you know, because I know you, because I've been around you, the thing that I notice when I see you is this equal parts compassion and seriousness. And people who don't know you probably don't know how to distinguish those two. They're like, well, she's really serious. I don't know if I can approach you. Like, nah, that's compassion you're seeing right there. But if you need her to get serious, you'll know when she's serious. She ain't got to tell you she's serious. You'll know when she's serious. Yes, and I love that about you when you bring that to the room, because I think that that is necessary in the work that we do today, particularly in one of the words I used in your introduction was trailblazing. And it's amazing that after, some 30 some odd, maybe even 40 years of this work of responsible fatherhood, that we're still trailblazing, right? You would think that we would have been able to really make some significant progress in this space, but there's still spaces and places that we need to be because people are woefully behind. understanding the importance of fatherhood. And so we start off our podcast each and every time with this simple question, and I think that it gives people insight to who we're talking to. And that question is, tell me your daddy's story.
Daddy story. Yeah, so my dad passed away a few years ago, and I am wearing a necklace. My dad had 5 girls, and this is one of his diamonds on his pinky ring, because he had a pinky ring with 5 diamonds. And so my parents were married in Denver. My dad had met my mom. He was in the military. My mother was in Denver, and he had a car, so he took my mom, his friend was trying to holler at my mama. And so he took his friend over there, but his friend didn't have no car. So my daddy said about a week later, he just rolled on in there. So his friend, didn't have a ride. And so my daddy, he just took opportunity. But that's the kind of man he was, right? When he saw opportunity, he was going to take it. He stood about 5'3", but extremely tenacious. And my parents were divorced, and so we spent every weekend, every holiday. I don't even know what it's like to spend a holiday with my mother. We didn't, she got us Christmas Eve, and that was it. And she knew we were going with my dad. We going to my grandma's, and we just hanging out. But my dad was very present, a very strong man, very tenacious. But he never spanked me. Like, he never put his hand on me. I probably should have got a spanking, like, at some point. But he would yell, like, I'm a whoop your butt, and then as we got older, he's like, yeah, right, sure, go, or win, bro.
Right.
But he said what he said. He meant what he said. I am a product of him. And that seriousness that you see, that you talk about, is probably just my daddy standing up inside of me, because when he was faced with challenges or situations, he was like, it's nothing that my girls can't do. He was very clear that he wanted all boys, and he did not get a boy. He got girls that, and I like to say, sometimes people will say to me, you have a type A personality, you got a strong personality. And my dad just raised us to be very strong women, right? We didn't, we weren't crybabies with him. He like, what you crying for? Stand up, sis, like, life gonna be hard. Wipe your tears, let's go. And so, but I am grateful for that relationship. Him and my mother had co-parenting issues when we were younger, but as we grew older and life circumstances came, I watched them take those challenges and look further into what was important, right? My dad he just loved women, just that, just... he's like, I just love women. He did finally get married, settle down, but he liked to, had several girlfriends, and that's just the way he lived. He just liked having, he was cute, and he little funky thing, had a lot of swag, and the women was calling.
Yeah. At 5'3", you gotta have some attitude. You gotta have
period.
some swag.
He was Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart think he cold? No, my daddy sees him on that.
I have a friend in one of my interviews not too long ago, Lawrence was sharing his story about his dad, and the first time he met his dad, and they're kind of having that first conversation, right? I never met you. I'm seeing you. We're trying to find our footing, talking. He says in the middle of the conversation, his dad said, well, I was a ladies' man. He said, I don't think that's the right conversation.
Right. But that was my dad. He was a ladies' man. And the lady, he probably was like, LL Cool J, like, the ladies loved him. I was sitting there, I was watching. I'm like, oh, she aggressive,
That's funny. When you think about him, can you pinpoint, like, maybe one thing that he said to you that has stuck with you and you never forget it?
I think 2 things. One of them is when I was going to school to be a social worker, he was not happy. He used to call me Susie. Like, okay, Susie, social worker, she gonna save the world. And he would always say that. Like, when I was in school, he like, how's it going? You gonna save the world? And then when I graduated, he said, go save the world.
Wow.
So that was so powerful. Like, on that day, he like, yeah, you got this, go save the world. And I think the second thing, I was telling him, my daughter out of high school signed up to go to the Navy. And she graduated. In January, she signed up to go to the Navy so that in June, she was getting on the boat. Like she had passed the test and everything. So I was like, what? And she hadn't said a word. And so I went to him and was like, Dad, like, come on, like, we got to get her out of this. And he said, that ain't your job. He said, your job now, you're going to scrape that nose. And then he proceeded to remind me of how many scrapes I had. He like, that one dude, when I had to come by his house because he thought he was going to try to put his hands.
Right.
Like, your job is to wipe the nose. So get you some tissue. And now you're in the wiping nose business. And I was like, oh, bet. So those two things like really, really stuck out with me, just me personally. And then because it's 5 girls, we got all kind of sayings that he had told us down through the years and stuff like that.
Country. Where was he born? Was he born? He's an Ohio born too?
He is Ohio born. Yeah, he is Ohio born. He was born, but my grandma's from Georgia. So he
brought that in space.
They bring it with them. You know how they do. He was taught it. Yeah.
So when you think about like your trajectory into this work, because I'm always curious about this as well, as much as I'm always curious about people's daddy story. Like, walk me through the journey where you began to think, you know what, this work of responsible fatherhood is where I want to set my plate right here. This is the table I want to set my plate. Talk to me about that journey and how you got into this space.
Yeah, so it's crazy how we got into this space. I write grants, and so I was working for my church, and someone from the governor's office called, and a partner church called and said, hey, they got this grant about healthy marriage, but they want to work with Black couples. And does your church want to participate? And so we were part of 5 churches at first that was working just with Black couples. In my church, we had plenty of couples. I'm like, this is a no-brainer. We could teach just all the men and women at our church, because we had a lot of couples. And from that, it started building data. And I was always data driven, always liked it, but didn't know to the point until we put our feet. So I was just a program coordinator. So I was just doing the classes, going along. And I'm like, this is nice. This is good. And then my husband got involved, and because I needed a man to recruit. So I'm like, you're going to have to get these dudes to come. Like, I can't, I got the women, but you go out here, see what you can do. And he was not in the space. And so he was like, okay, and then we started to do that. Out of that came then the next round of grants that became health. So I was in healthy marriage, 2 rounds of OFA funding. So the next one, we went a little broader because I'm just extra like that. So we started doing men, couples, singles, and youth. Okay. And out of that data, at about year 2, we started getting this influx of men coming to us, and we were reunifying men with their kids, checking on their child support, being advocates. And I think I got bit then. I think it's one particular man who was in a gang and got his life together. Co-parent was just out here in the street. Baby went in care, and he wanted his baby. And we started fighting with him, and we fought and we fought and we fought. And he got his baby. And I think at that point, I was like, yeah, this is it. As a matter of fact, I was doing healthy marriage work at an OFA conference, sliding in the, this before the thing, I was sliding in the fatherhood stuff, like just and then my first encounter was meeting Dr. Johnson. I met Dr. Johnson at 7:00 in the morning. I told somebody I wanted to work in fatherhood. They said, you need to meet Dr. J. I met Dr. J at 7:00, and it just kind of spark from there. And the community really led that, because that data was just, and then when I started looking up, we were serving on a healthy marriage grant, we were literally serving more men than we were couples.
Wow. When you just said, and this term can mean a whole lot of things, but I heard you say it, so we're going to talk about it. You said, when you were talking about your husband, you said, I need a man, right? In this context, when it comes to working with fathers, talk a little bit about why that was important for you to say.
I think because, at the onset, and this is at the onset of me starting this work, I did not want to lead it. I had all men. I had an all male staff. And I was it was 2 females, me and a program assistant, and all men. And I felt like men should be in the forefront. Right. They should be in the forefront. Like, you should step back, sis. They should be in the forefront, push them out. And so, but at the recruitment level of trying, at that program coordinator level, when you're trying to recruit and get men to come, you need a little brother right there to say, like, he asking you to come, right? Because you're going to ask different, right? We're going to ask a different way. But he was able to ask different and was able to say to men, like, they thinking it's a class. Like, he like, man, we just talking. Like, dude, we just coming up, man. You want to hear her talking all the time? Or he's like, you ain't even got to listen to her. They gonna do all the talking. We just vibing. And so just at the recruitment space, I needed him. And fatherhood programs need men and women. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. When you think about that, though, my belief is always, it's one of the questions that we get asked often, right? When we go and we talk about fatherhood, particularly in spaces where the responsible fatherhood conversation is not taking place. And we're encouraging people to get in this space, to do this work. And, undoubtedly, many of those spaces are predominantly women. And so they will often ask the question, can women work with dads? What have you discovered in that space that has become your spidey power when it comes to working with dads? And why is it important that women are included in this work?
Yeah, I think that I think you do a disjustice when you say, like, women shouldn't be in this space, right? Or women can only go so far in this space, right? It is very powerful. Again, when I was talking about, I set men out first and I was in the background. And then my husband had to literally say to me, get the bat, swing. You up. You gotta do it. Like, nobody has more passion than you. Like, you the person that gotta do the talking. Get out here, be in the front. And so a lot of times I hear people say things like, a woman can't teach a man how to be a man. And it's like, we teaching fatherhood curriculum. We are skilled facilitators, evidence-based, and we know how to get it done too. And I transitioned from, again, right now, most of my staff are females. I have all female staff that do from recruitment to facilitation, everything. We actually facilitate male and female. We never walk in the space without male and female being present in anything that we facilitate. And that just gives it balance, right? We found that gives it balance, that gives it structure, that gives it an outlook that sometimes most programs don't even have by putting us both in that space. So it's challenging to hear people say that. I laugh now. They used to say, how do women do that? I said, very well, thank you.
And that is, to me, is evidence when it comes to understanding that if in this work, you have to have that balance. In family, you got to have that balance, right? And so we understand how we got here. We understand how society has gotten to a place where women are mostly thought of to be in the social space, the social workspace. And men have always been in the working space. And now we've seen over time those two things merge. And now we're struggling. I've often said that women have done a great job in redefining womanhood, right? With empowerment and equal footing and fair playing ground, and really reestablished a new definition of what it means to be a woman. Mm-hmm. I think that where we as men have struggled is we haven't redefined manhood. Like, we really have not defined, and we keep allowing others to define manhood for us. Yeah. Right? We keep trying to force it forward with our action, but we're not, from a voiceful point of view, not saying, no. This is what manhood looks like, right? And I can push my stroller in the mall and still feel masculine. Right. Without people looking at me thinking I'm a sissy because I'm pushing, or my wife is dominating me, or whatever those kinds of things that we think in our head. Right. It is because we haven't established that nuance yet. And so the other thing, and I want to hear your comment on this, is that, whenever we create programs for women, or for moms, let's say moms, whenever we create programs for moms, we always take into consideration that moms are women. So we bring that to the space, right? We bring that, if we're talking to moms, like, wait a minute, she's in the function of a mom, but she's a woman, and you better not forget that, because there's nuances that she brings to the table as a woman. But when we create programs for fathers, we don't take into consideration that we are men. And there are men traits that we bring to the table that impact how you have to deal with us if you want us to understand what you're trying to get us to understand about fatherhood. And I see you shaking your head and you're working. Where do you see that play out in your work where it is? We're missing the boat when it comes to that piece of it.
I think we're just missing the boat on men, and in particularly Black men. Like, I think we miss it all the time. And I think that we don't allow men to be themselves. Right. We've come with it with the preconceived notion. This is what they're going to do. This is how they're going to respond. And I'm gonna tell you, actually, I have a co-parenting program. We work with women as well. There is a program, Sisters United, and I don't like working with the women.
Really? Wow.
They come with too much. Like, it's too much. When I'm working with these dads, I know they're coming. They're gonna come or they're not. They're gonna bring it 100%. They not coming to play, right? Women, we got some emotional stuff, so we got to get past, so many things before we get to it. You can be in a group with the man, and we'll start a group today, and it's on. Like, if it's an open space, they right here, right? And so I think because we just have all of these notions about Black men, and this is how they are, we throw all of them in a bucket and say they all like this, and then we shake it up and say, even if some come out different, we like, no, they the same ones that's in the bucket right there, and it's not, right? Each person is different. That piece of learning each man for who they are is very unique and very strategic in work, right?
Yeah. Now, you also work with Michael, your husband. And, most of the times when we see you, we see him, right? And so, but, that's a special, I love working with my wife, right? You probably don't see her as much with me as you probably should see her, but she's a behind the scenes person. The reason you see me so much is because I know that behind the scenes, she's running business and she's running organization and she's handling business in the background along with other staff. But when you think about your marriage and your relationship with Michael, how much of that relationship do you bring into your work? How much of that frames how you think about family?
All of it. All of it. As a matter of fact, when we was doing the healthy relationship class, we took the class. We're like, we teach these principles. Why don't we become a student first, right? And so without that, we actually started off teaching Dr. Rosario Slack's curriculum, basic training for couples, basic training for singles, and we took the class. We were like, no, literally, like, we want you to teach it to us first, like, not as in a facilitation skill set, but as in practical, right? So we use that curriculum, but we bring our whole selves to the table. We are a blended, what my husband refers to as a mended family. And so we actually do the co-parenting piece. So while I'm being a program director, I have to get my feet wet. I still facilitate. And most of the time I facilitate the co-parenting curriculum. Most of the time I'll facilitate it with him because I think it's important. We think it's important that Black couples see a Black couple, who has some ups and downs and challenges, co-parenting and trying to navigate all these spaces together, and then still being married. We're 21 years in the game now, so children are adult. We went through all of that, merging families and trying to figure it out, made some mistakes along the way, and are able to talk about those mistakes and share. And I think that adds value to the work that we do. I think it adds value to the curriculum. We've talked to all of our curricular developers, like, we gonna teach your curriculum, but we gonna give the story too. So we gonna keep but they gonna hear the challenges of my daughter, when she used to tell him, "You ain't my daddy, you don't tell me what to do." That part.
Wow. Yeah, well, that's a whole nother conversation. We got to go back to that. That's a whole nother conversation. But one of the things that I believe is also a critical component of what you're describing is perspective, right? And so when you're talking about families, it is critically important that men hear that perspective of couples from a woman's perspective and a man's perspective, because there's something you could tell me about that he can't tell me about that. Same thing holds true with women programs, which is where I think that they lack behind really strengthening women in the same way that we're attempting to strengthen men, which is they need to hear perspective from both women and men. And there's no ulterior motive in doing that, right? It's not that we want to get into space and talk to women because we want to tell them what to do. It is feeding information so that you understand, from my perspective, that there are two ways that something can be looked at from. And the challenge that you're talking about, the challenges in your relationship, in your marriage, comes when you see the same thing differently. And how do you manage that? Like, what does that look like? And so when you're working specifically with fathers, what is that thing that you think when they talk to you that you hear more of them asking than they do your husband?
I think it's a space for them to be able to ask the questions that they want to ask women. Like we break the code because we're constantly like, what do you want to know? We'll tell you. And we're like 9 times out of 10 is pretty much true. So there may be a woman, 1 or 2 or 3 who don't think like this, but for the most part, we give them the cheat secrets, right? Like we breaking the woman code, just giving them all kind of, but they're willing to ask those questions and realizing that they're open to be in that space. So again, initially I backed out of that space thinking like, no, but what I have learned is to keep that space sacred. So I don't walk into a space with fathers and never not thank them for allowing me in that space, because they don't have to. So if I'm in group or I'm on, we're doing a co-parents, if I join the men's group for some reason, sometimes just for observation, I'm always preparing. We come into that space saying, this is your space. Thank you for the opportunity of allowing us in your space. And then there's sometimes that we know to back out of that space. Some people think it's like when men cry, you back out the space. No, a lot of times they want us to stay on with them when they crying because. But there are places and spaces that some things come up and might be on a Zoom or in a classroom setting, and we just tag ourselves out. And so we just allow for that space to have the sacredness, and then we can come back to it. And so we've mastered being able to do that. And that was very challenging for us, but we learned it, right? And we learned it from men telling us. A lot of times people don't like the data thing, but we shape everything by data, which then doesn't make it hard for people to come to our programs or to be a part of us, because we literally do what they said they wanted us to do.
Absolutely. Can you teach that? Can you teach that connection?
Oh, absolutely. It can be taught. It can be taught.
Yeah.
It can be taught to the person who's willing to learn it. If a person is open, it can be taught. And I like to think that there are women practitioners just as well as there are men practitioners that are out there that don't know that they really a fatherhood practitioner yet. Because it's not defined. It's not as broad as, you just a social worker. It's not there. But I think that once people kind of know, like, this is a field, this is an area that I can step into, and I can learn and glean and become excellent at it. Yeah, if you want to, though. If you want to, because this is not for the weak.
Yeah, I always tell people this ain't hard work. This is heart work. And if your heart ain't in it, step away from the table.
Please go. Yeah.
Right. Because people will challenge you. People will challenge. And they bring realness to the table, right? It's kind of like, whoa, I got to slow down a little bit. Like, let me absorb what you just said.
Right.
Because I've never heard that before. I've heard things like that, but I've never heard this one before. Yeah. And I have to absorb that. We were having a conversation a couple of days ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago, about some work we're doing in West Virginia. And when we go in and do this work, we always kind of title that work Fatherhood 101. And I was talking to Patrick about it, and I said, no, we got to think about that term, because that term could be misleading, right? Because depending on who you're talking to, that term can mean something different. If we say Fatherhood 101 to fathers, they're thinking, oh, new dad, new concepts, teach me how to be a dad kind of thing. If you say fatherhood one-on-one to practitioners, they might be thinking the same thing. Why are they coming in to teach me how to be a dad or what I should know about a dad? When the opposite is true, which is, no, that's not what we're doing with you. That when you go into those spaces where people have not heard this conversation, that you have to start with why before you get to what, right? And why is working with dads important? Why is it important for you to understand who they are as men and dads? Why is it important that you embrace this in the totality of the work that you're already doing? And the last one, which always hits them low, why you need to address your own daddy issues before you start talking about family. And if you're not talking about fathers, you're not talking about family. In your space and in this work, doing training around the country, what are some of the things that you're seeing that we still have work to do out there in helping people understand working with fathers? And I know that's a long list, but
That's
just
a
give me
long
what comes
list. And
top
let
of
me
mind.
think where to start. Well, I'll give you an example about just doing some groundbreaking work here. When we started a coalition. And so I've chaired that coalition for 10 years, the Lucas County Fatherhood Coalition. And so when we first started working with community partners, I wasn't getting leeway with them, right? Like I couldn't get in with them. So I was like, I bet that these people have their own fatherhood issues. That's why they don't want to talk about fatherhood. Because, I'm walking in meetings, like I'm kind of known in the city, like they'll be talking and I'm like, and everybody does it now. They like, here she come. What about the father? Like that was my question. Like we're not going to talk about the father, so it's known now. But when I sat down with the practitioners and admonished them to share, and I simply said exactly what you said: share your fatherhood story. It's important that we know where you come from. There was a practitioner who is prominent. Let me put it that way. And she said, I don't know who my daddy is. And my mama won't tell me. I'm 50 years old. And she started to cry. We went to the next practitioner. He talked about his drug addiction due to his father being in the home, but a very rocky relationship. And so I was sitting there like, oh, shoot. Here's the problem. This is why they never will be at the level of making referrals. You know what I'm saying? Because they dealing with, I still don't know who my father is. And that is not important now because I've moved on. I've got a husband. I have children and all is well. And I was just like, all is not well. So then we went on this journey of me doing individual meetings with them, talking to them about their fatherhood issues, teaching them and talking to them about forgiveness. Right. And so that is, so one space that I think that we don't, not much curricula talks about this. You have to add it. I think curricula should start off like, what's your daddy issues? Where's your dad? It should start there, and then let's get some healing. And in your book, your manual for Spit and Anger, you have that in there. In your book, I've studied you a long time. See, I know that. You have that in there, and it's so powerful that I want to extract that out and say this is lesson one. Lesson one is let's have this roundtable discussion about where we stand with our fathers and where we stand with forgiveness, because you cannot move past that, right? I like to liken our programs to a good Band-Aid. What I mean by that, you ever had a real bad, one of the Band-Aids that when you take it off, you can't get it off. It got the black on it, like it's off. We are that. We are that good Band-Aid. But if we don't open that up and let that wound heal, let the air hit it and let it naturally heal, then we're going to come back again to put that Band-Aid back on, because at some point that has to be ripped off. It has to be ripped off with what you've experienced with your father and your father's father, and then what you've done. Right, as a father, maybe there's some things to do, and what has been done to you. And more than likely, where I sit at in the space that I stand in, there's a lot of what has been done to fathers than not what fathers have done.
Right, absolutely. Now, when I after I did that show with Oprah a couple of years ago. I came home one day and my wife said, "You got a package," and I was like, "Okay, like, why are you telling me now? You typically open up all my mail. Why are you telling me about this one?" And so it was a package from Oprah. She had sent me a package, and she sent me a package, and I opened it up, and it was a book on the inside. And so I opened a book, and she had written inside the book saying how honored she was meeting me, keep up the great work. And she said, "I thought about you, have been thinking about you, and wanted to send you this book because I think you should think about this as you're doing the work." And the book is called "What Happened to You?" And she said, "You should always be asking the question,
What
if it
happened?
is only to yourself in dealing with people, you should be trying to figure out really like what happened to you, bro? Like what
Absolutely.
happened to you, young lady? Because there's some stuff. And, this space will take you into spaces that legally we're not credentialized for, but I believe spiritually and emotionally we are,
Absolutely.
right? So we
Absolutely.
know how to deal with hurt people.
Oh,
Like you're
absolutely.
talking about a hurt people, working with hurt people so that they don't hurt people. Like we good at that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
That needs to be a degree, right?
Oh,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah. Yeah, that's a PhD.
absolutely.
You call
So,
me doctor. You call me doctor, sir.
absolutely. And that's learned or lived experience, that new
Yes, sir.
term that they're
Yes.
using, right? So
Yeah.
listen, tell me about Brothers United because I see the shirt. The shirt is fly. I think I saw some jackets. I'm like, the swag is deep up
The
there
swag is deep.
in Ohio. Tell me about Brothers United.
Yeah, yeah. So Brothers United started in 2015 out of that data that we had got from Healthy Marriage. And we did a randomized control trial with the young fathers 20 to 24 at a 2-to-1 ratio, randomized 58 hours of curricula. 6 weeks, very extremely intense. I felt the need at that time when we were going to do that. And randomized control trials are really hard when we start talking about Black people.
Absolutely.
Because people are like, what are you doing? But I knew, that my community could handle it. Right. I knew that. I knew the space that I work in and live in, that my community can handle it. B, my community had no data on any
Right.
father, Black or white. And
Right.
so then I knew we would be doing some groundbreaking things. And so we came about that way just from pulling the data going. I was serving all those fathers with child support. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, what's going on at child support? I had to file for child support with my ex-husband, but we were married. And so marriage and child support looks very different from
Absolutely.
co-parent child support, right? He had a lawyer, I had a lawyer. They divvied up, said what they need to say, and then we signed and we good, right?
Right.
That co-parenting space, it's bananas, right? From the onset, because even in Ohio, fathers have no rights in Ohio. When fathers have a baby in Ohio, a lot of men, at least our last set of data that we recently did in 23, 24, dads are signing what they think is a birth certificate, and it's a child support affidavit.
Wow.
80% of the fathers. So when people say fathers are absent, it's like, yeah, right. 80% are signing what they think is a birth certificate, but it's a child support affidavit. So they on child support out the gate, day one. And they have to go to court to file for paternity. Paternity has to be established. They have to file, and then they have to file for visitation. So it is
Wow.
bananas, right? And so we jumped into this working with these 20 to 24-year-old dads. Now, we all almost died. First of all, trying to catch them. And we started out really slow, trying to think we could get referrals and things like that. And then we just got lifted up and just hit the street. One of my staff in the meeting was like, "You want to know where they at?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "They in the alleys." So like, we need to not be working during the day. She was like, "We need to come in like 5 o'clock, 8 hours." I was like, what? And then we didn't have the swag. And so the back of our shirt says the only hood that we claim is fatherhood. And so in about our second year, we had been serving out the gate. I had a guy who was a blood. So he went and got all the bloods. So we was clear we were good with the bloods. We had all kind of, we was deep with them. And then we started to continue to reach out. And so the staff was just saying, let's brand, let's get a t-shirt. And I'm like, no, because the guys we work with, like, they could end up, something could happen. No, they run in the street. And I didn't want to have the brand put, at that level. And so we just said, that's it, let's go. And it took off like wildfire. We have shirts for our children. We got baby shirts. The women have shirts, our youth got shirts. Every program has its own logo. Every program has its own branding, its own shirt. And so we started branding by, everything. We did radio ads, billboards, different things like that. But we really started to brand within the community. Like I said, you see a blood and he wearing our shirt. And then you see somebody that's just, Fifth Street Boys, he wearing our shirt. And so now we got all these sides of town wearing shirts that it became their pride in that what they do. And so we called it, so Brothers United is our logo, but the men are called the Brothers United Nation. So they're called BU Nation, a nation of fathers that will rise up and advocate for themselves long after government money is gone and all the programs and procedures and all that kind of stuff. These men stick together to rise up in the community to speak against, and in particular, things that happen with Black fathers. And so that data just set us apart. I knew at like maybe about the second year that I'm like, it's on you, sis. You gotta get it. Like, this is weird. It's something. And really, people didn't know that we were doing a randomized controlled trial until we were in about our fourth year. And then we announced it to the community.
Wow.
And but one of the things that we did, and we did a pure randomized controlled trial. We had fathers who got something and fathers who got nothing. But we tested them, and the way that we tested them, we gave them just as many incentives, though. We was rocking that money out. I think like 300, 350, everybody was getting it, right? So when we would ask you a question, because the way that I started to tell fathers is that I value you, right? And after you're done with this, you can come back to the program. But it was a year wait. It was a whole year wait. And I just had dynamic people. We was able to follow people through their grandmamas. I always say when you work with the father, you're working with the whole family, her family, and their family. Right, they cousins and all them. And so we were able to do it and not lose respect in our community for it, which was what I valued the most. That when we started to talk to the Black community about it, when I was saying to them, this is why, they were like, go, sis, go. How can we help you? You need us to find somebody for you? And then COVID hit, which saved us, right? Because we couldn't find these dudes, right? We up at night, we chasing them, we in the bars, we in strip clubs, we in all the non-traditional places, we in the bathroom, we in there, what's up, where he at, y'all? We take tablets, we like, take this test, come on, answer these questions. And then COVID hit, and we still kept working. I was like, this grant ends September 20th, we getting ready to get it. And we just was at people's houses, we became essential workers. And so while a lot of people were inside, we masked up and we was like, we'll be at the house. We're going to put the tablet on the porch. And we Lysol the tablet, keep it moving.
Wow.
Yeah, so we were able to gather that data. And now on the back end of not being a Fed, right, we're able to leverage that data. I'm able to leverage the data in so many different spaces and places in our community, outside of our community. People call me all the time about how do you do that? What do you do? And I found that best practices are best practices, no matter where you are. If I'm in Georgia, I might move a little slower. I go to Philly, I'm
Right.
If I'm in Cleveland, where I'm from, you can jog a little bit, but I found that it's transferable. So that was just the best lesson learned, but that's where we stand. And so we're 10 years in, and out of that, we've developed 4 or 5 other programs. I like to say, Brothers United, the daddy had babies, because now we got multiple programs through the data. And now we're serving 12 to 17-year-olds on the prevention end. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to sink a little bit into this space because you mentioned it a couple of times, and I talk about it all the time. And you and I are across the country, probably even across the world, but let's just talk about this country. And we're in a lot of different, diverse kind of spaces, talking to diverse people. And I think that when people see our public persona, right, when they see us on social media and they hear our language and hear our conversations, like, oh, they only concerned about black dads. They don't really know anything about anybody else. Yet, here you and I are, we in South Dakota, Iowa, New Hampshire, Mississippi, Texas, Ohio, and all points east, west, north, and south, in all kind of spaces and places that people don't see us in. But we're
Right.
there helping and serving individuals on how to work with dads. But it has been extremely critical for me all my career, as it has been for you, that we do a very intentional focus on black dads. Ryan, why is that important to you?
I think because I had a black dad, and I love black men. I love black men. I love what black men represent. I love the strength of black men. I love the tenacity of black men. I say, even to you, for you to wake up this morning and put your clothes on, is heroic in itself. You are a whole hero over there because the tragedies and the trauma that black men have had to have since they brought us over here has been it's it's unbelievable to me, right? And so I share space and I am unapologetically serving black fathers. So if people ask me that, absolutely. But if a white father comes, let him come. He gonna get this blackness. He gonna get this
Right.
blackness. Right? It's gonna come out black. It's not going to, we're not gonna figure out how to do it for your population. You want to stand in our space, then come on in and get in this space. Right. Along, same thing with Latino fathers. I have people challenge me all the time. Avis, you're not on the other side of town where the Latino fathers are. Okay, you want me to help you with your people? You do it. And I'm unapologetic about it. In a town that only has what they say is 12% black, they didn't take them people didn't take the census. Who they say is 12%. I know it's deeper than that, right? And up until this year, actually 2024, my data was at about 95% black. It is now 75%. And that's just because of the work that we've done. People are coming into our space. We have people, we have white men calling us like, hey, my friend said you helped them. What you got? Or they'll see us out and they like, we've been wanting to be a part. Well, come on, be a part. But it's not going to change how we talk, how we walk. And so I stand in that space. And even when I'm talking with, I've been places where I've looked up their data and I'm like, yeah, you teaching curricula to fathers and your grants say all fathers, but you got 95% white and you got a 15% population of black fathers. Let me tell you how to go get them. Even if you are white, let me teach you how to go get them because this is the population you need to be at because you're missing something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you like me, and I'm in Atlanta, so I get it was the one thing that I appreciated moving from New York and coming to Atlanta because when I was in New York, I always had to justify why I wanted to work only with black fathers. In Atlanta, it's blackity black black, and so it is what it is. But we still pull those other dads, and when they come through, like when you hear their testimonies, and we get testimonies from all of our fathers, what they'll say is like, "Wow, when I first saw it, I wasn't really sure if it was for me, and then I got in here, and I was like, yo, this was where I needed to be."
Right.
And we get more and more when they find out. It's like, listen, we are who we are, but understand that the vast majority of the conversation we're going to have when you're in this space is about fatherhood. Now, we may have some nuances on how we look at fatherhood, but the general principles of being a responsible parent don't look different no matter what you look like. Right. And so you may have to deal with some things in your space that I don't have to deal with in my space. And I might have to deal with some things in my space that you don't have to deal with in your space. Those things culturally I have to get around. But at the end of the day, my children, until I tell them we black, they don't really know they're black until somebody else tells them they black, right? Or they find out and learn, just like anybody else in this space. So I'm glad to hear you say that. I think that you use the word, and I use it as well, and I think more of us need to use this word, that is unapologetically. Because there are a lot of fatherhood organizations out here who work with their own. And I always say, that's fine. If I wanted to be a part of that, I'm sure if I walked in the door, they'll be like, okay, but to your point, you're going to get this whiteness when you come in here. You'll get it the way we get it, or Christian, or whatever that group may be, you're going to get it this way. Vice versa. But come in, get in where you fit in, which is like what I always like to say. The other piece, Avis, I want to talk a little bit about while we have a few more minutes is systems, because I didn't want to get too deep into systems because we could talk a whole lot about systems, specifically child support. But one of the things that we understand with our fathers is that, child support in and of itself is not the issue. The issue is that they don't know how to navigate systems, and they get caught up. The better you know a system, the better you understand a system, the better you can get through a system, right? That is not some evil empire. Well, somebody might debate that conversation, right? But it's not this evil empire, that's sitting somewhere waiting for you to come through to like dump on you. It's a system that human beings put together to manage a process. And unfortunately, the process is not equal. And you're struggling with the process because you don't understand a process. And that if you think child support is the only system you're entangled in, think again, because you're entangled in several systems and they are all crashing in on you at the same time. When it comes to doing this work and really helping your dads navigate these systems, whether it's child support, criminal justice, housing, employment, all of those things, what does that work look like for you guys?
So at first it looked like case management. So we were just like, we'll make a referral, like we were doing because I'm old school case manager. So you're going to make them referrals. I got all my checks in Inform for the contact, right? So we're going to make those. And then it became advocacy, right? And then it became about disproportionality for me. And so I started to sit in spaces and places, child welfare, child support, different things, saying, no, this is not equitable. What are we doing? Why are we talking to him? Why does he get punished deeper than this guy? What's going on here? And so it's an advocacy space for us now. And so one of the things for our randomized control trial we wanted to prove is that we would teach fathers how to navigate systems, and we did well with it. That was one of our shining points coming out of that randomized control trial, is that men know how to navigate those systems, and that systems knew how to navigate them. And so one of the simple things we would say, okay, wear your t-shirt when you go to court. When you go to court, let them know who you belong to. And so then we were starting to have mothers go down to child welfare, child support, and take a man off, because she has the ability to do that if she can. She can sign it all off. And so we found that out, and we started going down that road. And it made ruffle some feathers. We had a lot of people kicking back. We had co-parents who lived together, and he owed $80,000. It's like, y'all been living together. What the heck? Go down there and get them papers and come out. And we had to find out too, like year one, again, this is the importance of data. It had, obligor or obligee, but didn't nobody know what that meant. They like, who's that? Nobody. And they would just hand them papers and say, fill this out, right? And so they learned how to fill it out. And so we taught them those systems. So teaching systems is extremely important, how to walk in that system, how to talk in that system, and how to share.
Yeah, because in Atlanta, where we have this much like Ohio, this kind of two-tier system where these guys, the process of having legal rights to your child is twofold. There's an administrative process that they have to go through in order to be placed on child support, but at the same time, there is a not administrative process that they have to go through, which is more of a legal process to establish paternity, right? And they have to go through superior court in order to do that. And that process costs on average $5,000. And if they have multiple mothers, it's $5,000 per mom, not per child, because you put multiple children on the same. But they don't understand that this is a process. Now, here's the crazy thing about it. When you talk about moms going in, once they understand and learn the system, we have legitimation classes that we do, and we have a relationship with Georgia Law and Georgia State University and the interns and Georgia Justice Project. And they come in and they actually go through with these dads and they help them fill out their entire petition, notarize it, check it, all those good things. They do it. And so it eliminates the need for them to have to pay for that process, and they can go in per se. But because the courts here know, Fathers Incorporated know the work that we're doing, when they see our name stamped on something, they know, oh, this came through the process. We know this is legit. Now, that's for the guys who have the courage to go and put the petition in. Do you know that out of all the dads that we've serviced over the last now close to 2 years, only 70% of them actually go to the court to turn the petition in? And you know what the number one reason is? I don't want to disturb the relationship I have currently with the mother of our child. And I'm like, okay, we've got to find a way to bridge this fatherhood work with relationship work, not marriage work, relationship work and co-parenting. Have you seen that? And how have you figured out how to bridge
Absolutely.
those two things?
We just started Brothers and Sisters United. We just started
Okay.
a program. We're like, come on over here, get this part, and then get this part, right? Because it's too hard to navigate. And the other reason why too, we found is that it's court. So like in all these spaces, we're literally telling Black men to go somewhere where they've been abused, where they've been mistreated. And we're saying, go trust the people that have mistreated you. So if somebody arrested, if your reputation is known for arresting people, like asking them to come somewhere and you arrest them, and then 10, 15, 20 years later, you say, I'm not like that no more.
Right.
You come. Well, we actually walked the dad through child support because he was just that nervous. He said, I'm telling you, they gonna arrest me. We like, no, they not. Not this time. They not like this. Well, y'all come and go with me. Okay. So it's a lot of that. We're doing it at the same time. So we're not just saying you go. I spent countless, between child welfare and child support, they should pay me a check for just being on staff and helping them, right? I've sat in their spaces. They know when I'm coming. I've sat outside court, in court, just advocating and just always in that advocating space. But it's important, again, to realize that you're asking a dad to do something to a system that has abused him all of his life. As far back as I remember, that continues to treat him, unjustly, right? And so we're saying, no, trust this system.
Which is why I'm challenged with the DEI conversation, and that's a whole nother conversation too, right? Because if you're not taking into consideration the historical racism context over particularly Black men and Black and brown men, then you're not really taking this systematic work seriously when it comes to working with this population, because you have to factor that in. I always liken it to, Avis, that, there's some people that know that there's a killer in the barn, that they're like, oh, let's go investigate. And then there's some other people like, nah, let's not go investigate. Let's go the opposite way. That's us. That's us. They expect us. We know that there's a killer in the barn. We're not going in the barn. Right? You got to open the barn up. You got to turn the lights on. You got to let me kind of see. I got to send somebody else in there to check it out before I go in there. All those things. That's the analogy of the system for us. We're not going in because it has not worked out for us in the past, walking into those doors. Listen, you are a treasure. I love you to death. Ain't nothing you can do about it, as my board president always says to me. What's in the future for you? What are you trying to accomplish? What's your big thing that you're trying to take down? I know you got a lot of them, but what's that?
I got a lot of balls in the air. You know what? I am literally, this is going to sound cliche, but I am really literally asking God in this space, what's next? Brothers United is 10 years old. It's not a baby anymore. It's raised. It functions without me. I could be all over the place, but it functions because of systems and systematic approach of how the work works. So I can be in Alaska and go on the system and check and make sure it's good, because it's just the way and the structure that we set. And so what do you do when your baby is 10? Not quite 16 yet, but I am not interested in growing it. I'm not interested in making sure that it turns to be 18, because it stands alone. The work stands alone. And I believe that I have come to this space where I have probably taken it with my skill set and think as far as it can go, and waiting to make that transition and that transfer. And so that's where I sit, just in this kind of, and at the same time, my hands are always up going, here I am, send me. So wherever that lands. And so that's a weird space to be in. And so sometimes people want me to, they're constantly asking me, but want me to give them some, the trajectory of my career. Well, this is not a career. This is life work. This is what God has called me to do and to set in this space. I will always be a fatherhood practitioner until I am, until I stop breathing. And then somebody else is gonna say, sis was a fatherhood practitioner. So somebody else is gonna say it when I'm on the other side. But so it's just up in the air. And I'm just saying, where you want me to go, God, I'll go where you send me. So.
Well, thank you for that. Well, we're gonna hope that God continues to feed you in your journey, as He has already done. If I had to lend one thought for you to think about in that process, I think that there is a necessity in this space for scale and sustainability, meaning that while that baby is 10 doesn't mean that you can't have some more babies, right? Because scaling means duplication. It means spreading. It means taking BU to LA, to here, to there, planting seeds where that whole planting seeds thing from God is just not about, you don't have to keep putting your seeds in the same garden. You can plant the same plant, but take some of those seeds, plant some here, plant some there, plant some here, plant some here, because that's where my mind is right now. Stability, scale, and then sustainability, so that this thing lasts beyond my tombstone. And so, because the work is too big and too important to leave for chance and to leave for the expectation that somebody is going to lead it and drive it like I am, right? And so that process has to be in place. So that's just something for you to think about. And I'm telling you, there's a challenge in that. That will keep you up at night when you start thinking about planting seeds and having to go around the country and see your babies somewhere else. Right?
Yeah, we are in Erie County, so we started 2 years ago. So we put our foot in Erie County. So we're in Sandusky, where Cedar Point is. So we're digging soil there. So yeah. Nice. But thank you for that. You always lend yourself to good advice and always a champion. And I appreciate the way that you and thank you for having me. I appreciate the work that you've done. I honor your space in you going before me, and thank you for opening space for me. I don't take that lightly. So I want to let you know I appreciate that. I appreciate the work that you've done. You've given good space for us to follow in, and that's important in the shape of this work. So I thank you and I appreciate you for that.
Thank you so much. And to my I Am Dad podcast listeners, thank you so much for joining us again. You know how I like to leave you. Always be kind to others as you're kind to yourself, or you might find yourself by yourself. Always shoot high for your goals, because even if you miss, you'll be amongst the stars. And as my good friend and mentor Art Mitchell used to always say to me, it's nice to be important, but you know what? It's much more important to be nice. Till next Sunday, peace out.
Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us. You've been listening to I Am Dad podcast. We hope that you have been informed, encouraged you to think, or even inspired your heart for the love of dads. The conversation does not end here. Come back and join us next week. Same time, same place. Or you can continue the dialogue on our I Am Dad Facebook page. We also invite you to listen to past episodes, learn more about us, and keep up with special activities by visiting IamDadPodcast.com. That's IamDadPodcast.com. Until next time, I leave you with this reminder of manhood from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 11. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. Because of this reminder, I will always understand that I am dad, period.